Hi, I'm John, and I want to talk to you a little bit about listening. Specifically, I want to talk to you about listening to feedback in training. Okay, so let's talk about listening and what that means. First of all, there's a huge difference between the act of listening and the art of listening. The act of listening is just hearing people with your ears, right? But the art of listening is really paying attention to what they're saying and understanding it, looking for meaning. It's all about getting the meaning out of the words that they say, not just hearing them. Okay, so let's start off with that. We want to focus on the art of listening and not the act of listening. We want to do more than just hear them. We want to really hear them. When we really hear somebody, then it lets them know we're listening to them. And it helps them feel like they are heard. Notice that word I used there? Feel? It's an emotion, right? People want to know that they are heard, and they want to feel like they have been heard and listened to. They want to feel like what they've said is important to you. That's what we want to focus on here. So stop multitasking. Try to maintain some good eye contact, and remain open to conversations based on things that they say. Now, as they speak, you want to make sure that you slow down a little bit and really look for the meaning behind their words, pay attention to them there, and then withhold judgment. To show them that you're paying attention to them, then you need to limit your talking. You need to provide a little bit of feedback, though. That sounded a little contradictory, didn't it? So limit our talking, but provide a little bit of feedback. What do I mean by that? Okay, so limit your talking while they're talking. Of course, don't interrupt them. Let them finish what they're saying. If you need to, take some mental notes on the things that you want to address when they're done, but let them finish. When they finish, that's when you can provide that feedback. Now, the feedback needs to come in the form of confirming that you understand. That's what we want to convey here. Show them that you understand because you were listening. And when you do that, when you show them that you understand, then they will feel like you were listening to them. And that builds you some trust. So let's talk about the 6 steps of listening. The first step is paying attention. This is where you collect information, you let them speak. As a trainer, we've already given them the thing that we want to instruct them on, right? We've taught them how to run that machine or how to do this process. And now we're listening to them to provide some feedback here. Okay, so that's the area that we're talking about in paying attention and listening to them. We're going to provide them feedback. So we've got to understand what they're doing so we can intelligently talk about what they've done and what they describe and the steps that they've walked us through. So be respectful as a listener. Let them think and speak. Let them take their time if they need to take a little bit of time to think about the steps. That's okay. And when they explain this to you, then you can ask them questions such as, what do you think about this? Is there anything that you were unclear about? And why would we do this? Those are great questions to ask that will prompt them to dig just a little bit deeper into what they were explaining. And if you can get them to do that, then it will help them understand a little better, because then they're processing what they just told you. Instead of just a rote regurgitation of information that you gave them earlier, now they're feeding it back to you. Now they're actually thinking about it. And that's what we want. And this is where step 2 in listening comes in, withholding judgment. So if they make a mistake, withhold your judgment. Don't be harsh, don't be critical, but instead of pointing out the mistake, ask them questions to help them realize their own mistake. You might have heard me say before in other training videos, listen to their emotions, look at their behaviors. No adult learner likes to be shamed, right? So if they make a mistake, be kind about it. Help guide them with questions so that they can figure out their own mistakes. After all, isn't that how we learn best? Is by learning from our own mistakes? We don't want somebody else to point them out to us. We want to learn on our own a lot of times. So if you guide them with some thoughtful questions, why did you do this? Why would we want to do this instead? If you guide them with some questions, then it helps them realize the mistake and realize what to do right. In addition to that, some reinforcing words would be great here. Remember to provide lots of positive feedback for adult learners. It's great you're thinking about this, but maybe we should do it another way. What do you think about? And then follow up there. Or, this is a common issue that I see a lot of people doing. Maybe we should, instead of doing that, maybe we should do this. You could even say, this is a common issue. I see a lot of people doing this, but let's look at how to correct this. Notice the inclusivity there. Let's look at how to correct this. And this kind of subconsciously means that we're not putting the entire fault or blame on them, right? We're trying to be constructive in helping them figure out the right way to do something. And that's a great way to phrase things. This leads us to step 3 in the listening process, which is reflecting. As a listener, we have to realize that we shouldn't assume we understand what the person was telling us. So we want to make sure we understand that. Often when we're listening to somebody, we wait until our next turn to talk, right? We've heard that before. Well, when we're doing this in a feedback situation for training, then very often we're waiting for them to finish so that we can correct them. And we have to stop ourselves from doing that. We have to be good self-monitors a little bit. What we should do then is pause. After they give us their explanation, and we've listened intently to them, we want to make sure we understand what they were saying, right? So what we do is we pause. You give it a little bit of a pause for a few seconds, and you make sure you understand what they were saying. It's kind of like we've robotically memorized what we're going to say as feedback, when really we need to make sure that we listen to them, understand it, process it, and then really get the meaning behind what they're saying before we respond. And this leads us to step 4 in the listening process, which is clarification. Now, this is the time when we can actually verify with the trainee that we do understand them. So we're actually going to ask for clarification here. You can do this by simply asking, let me see if I'm clear on this, and then repeat in kind of a paraphrasing way what they just told you to confirm with them that that's what they said. You could even do this to the greatest amount of detail that you can remember if this is a very complicated process. But paraphrasing here works pretty well. Now, the great part about this is where you could really highlight to them and their brain where they might have made a mistake. Without being a smart aleck about it, this is what we might do. So let me get this right. You want me to push this button, you want me to pull this lever, and then you want me to put my hand in the machine. Is that right? Am I understanding you correctly that that's what we should do? Now, there is a fine line between being what's known as a smart aleck and genuinely asking that question. But if we repeat it to them like that, kind of just matter-of-factly, then they might see that there was a mistake made, right? Now, don't get upset if they don't realize that there was a mistake. If they don't realize that putting their hand in the machine right there was a mistake, then that's okay. They're new to the process or new to this task, right? So keep that in mind and say, okay, since you said that's what you meant, let's review this. Now ask them questions. What will happen if I put my hand in the machine at this stage right here? What's going to happen to me? And then they'll think about it and maybe realize the mistake then. And if they still don't realize it, then you can point it out. Now remember, this part of the machine is going to come down and chop. So you could point it out there, but give them enough chances to realize their own mistake. This is where you get that clarification on their understanding, and this is also where you can fix some of those mistakes that they made by helping them realize that they made them. You repeating this for clarification and verification with your trainee then also helps them see that you were listening. Now we get to step 5 of the listening process, the sharing step. I call this the exchange phase because it's all about an exchange of ideas. So you've given them some information about a task or a procedure or a job that they're supposed to do. Then they've given you some feedback. That feedback that they've given you then tells you a few things. It tells you what they understand. It tells you what they don't understand. It tells you about any assumptions they might have made. It tells you if they need some clarification on some particular part of that process or task. It tells you quite a lot if you simply listen to them. And here is where you share. Here is where you can correct them in a kind way, but be open to conversations in this stage of listening. It's more about a dialogue here. It's more about an exchange of ideas back and forth to help them and guide them. Now is the time to help them understand why you want it done the way you want it done, or the company way, or however it is supposed to be done. But this exchange phase, then, is more like a dialogue because it makes it more personal. And when people feel it's more personal, that you really listened, and now you're providing feedback in a way that's an exchange of ideas and information, then they're more likely to trust you and more likely to listen to what you have to say. And that leads us to our final step, the 6th step of listening, which is summarizing. And here's where you briefly, very briefly then summarize the main ideas that they provided you. So this is your last step of feedback here in the listening. You have actively listened to them this whole time, and you're just going to simply recap. Let me make sure this is clear. Step 1, you said do this. Step 2, you said do this. Step 3, you said do this. After you do step 3, you can ask them for some clarification, as if you don't remember. What did you say step 4 was again? And this is where you can really check that they've got it, that they are understanding the process. That doesn't mean you didn't listen to them and you didn't hear their step 4, but you're just asking for that clarification to verify their understanding. And that's all part of this process. Listening is key, absolutely, to get the meanings there. But in this stage of feedback for a trainer and a trainee, this is vital. Another great reason that we summarize things at the very end of this listening process is to clarify it in their mind. Because if you're training somebody, you're trying to help them remember things, right? And this final quantification, first, second, third step, this helps them kind of itemize the different things that they have to do. And by you repeating it in a very brief way at the end, helps them remember it even more. And there you have the 6 steps of active listening for training feedback. I hope this helps you in your training program. I absolutely understand that not every system works for everybody. I understand there are other great systems and steps to listening out there. If you have some of those ideas, you're absolutely welcome to share them in the comments. I appreciate it. And if you got any value out of this at all, give me a thumbs up. Have a spectacular day.